What's going on? This is My Life in the Shop. I'm your host, Donald Washington. Now, I don't know if you guys been paying attention to the news. Yesterday on CNN, there was a guy, his name is Elizondo. He's the top Pentagon official that was put in charge of a UFO. Like 22 million was put in this program to search for extraterrestrial life. He was on CNN yesterday. Now, he's going to say, we are not alone. This also comes at the same time that there's a strange type of cigar-shaped asteroid that's in our solar system headed this way. Now, the article is going to read about the cigar-shaped UFO that's headed this way. Now, they don't know if it's a spacecraft, an asteroid, or whatever. But what they're saying is last month's discovery of a long thin object floating aimlessly throughout space brought some pretty feverish speculation about the company mankind keeps in its universe. Is this an alien spacecraft with little green men about to visit Earth? What they're saying on this is in Yahoo's story. A newspaper said astrologers are saying it's enough to sink underneath your boots, blah, blah, blah. However, I'm going to bring you guys to the story of on CNN. Now, what happened is that they're going to release 3 videos of extraterrestrial craft. One of them being by 2 fighter pilots in an F-16. They're going to take a video of a craft, and what this guy's going to say is it's definitely not from the planet Earth. And she's going to bluntly ask him, are we alone? And he's going to say, we're not alone in this universe. And that's amazing from somebody that used to work for our government to come out and bluntly say and admit that we are not alone. And I never thought that anyway. I'm going to bring y'all some more personal thoughts on this subject. But I'm going to bring y'all what was going on CNN yesterday if you missed it.
Outside next, extraterrestrials among us. The secret U.S. government effort to hunt for UFOs exposed, and tonight out front, the man who led the classified program. Let's go, out front. Unidentified flying objects and extraterrestrials. The secret Pentagon program is a secret no more, and the man who headed that effort to find them is out front. Tens of millions of dollars spent on investigating UFOs. Well, this is for real, and the man who headed the top secret government program is going to tell you all about it. He is my guest. New tonight, the Pentagon's secret search for UFOs. For the first time, the Defense Department acknowledging a mysterious program dedicated to investigating UFO sightings. Now, this started more than a decade ago. $22 million price tag was secretly funded using so-called black money. The agency investigating possible alien encounters like this one. This is taken by U.S. Navy fighter jet. It's an unknown object about the size of a commercial jet, apparently hovering about 50 feet above the water. The pilot on board that jet saying as he flew closer, the object peeled away, accelerating like nothing he's ever seen. Again, that was a U.S. Navy fighter jet in pilot's point of view. Out front now, the former Pentagon military official who ran the covert government program up until this last November, Luis Elizondo. Luis, thank you so much for your time tonight. I mean, first, tell us what the purpose of the program was and why it was so secretive.
Sure. The purpose of the program, Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, was really designed to do just that. From a national security perspective, identify those things that we see, whether we see them electro-optically, we see them with radar, we see them as eyewitness reports, through a myriad of different ways and avenues that we receive the information, and try to ascertain and determine if that information is a potential threat to national security, in a nutshell.
So what did you find?
Well, we found a lot. I think...
and that's amazing. Did you see his face? He said, well, we found a lot. So now, one of the guys at the Pentagon that's leaving the Pentagon, one of the senators or whatever, he's going to release 3 videos. This is one of them, of the 2 fighter jet. Now, the 2 fighter jets, if you guys haven't seen that video, the UFO is flying against the wind. They're going like 10 knots, something like that, and this UFO is flying 10 times faster than that against the wind. Something, and he's going to say this is definitely nothing of human origin.
I think it's probably been a little bit mischaracterized in some of the social media you see and what people put out, because a lot of times when we don't have a lot of information, we tend to fill in those gaps with what we think is logical. And there's still, by the way, a lot we really don't know. I think what's important is that we have identified some very, very interesting, anomalous type of aircraft. Let's call them aircraft. Things that don't have any obvious flight surfaces, any obvious forms of propulsion, and maneuvering in ways that include extreme maneuverability beyond, I would submit, the healthy G-forces of a human or anything biological, hypersonic velocities, low observability, positive lift, again, seemingly defying the laws of aerodynamics.
Pretty much not made on this earth. None of the laws of aerodynamics apply to these craft. Nothing a human can produce.
So, people
do you
are talking.
think? I mean, but do you believe? When you get that Navy pilot saying what he said, do you think that was, a UFO? Obviously, I don't have any other word to use, or something else?
Sure, that's a great question. Keeping in mind, it's not just the pilot's testimony on an observation. Sure, when someone comes to you who's in charge of a multi-million-dollar weapon platform, who maintains a top-secret security clearance, who is paid and trusted by this country to go fight wars and to fly over cities with live munitions, and by the way, they're trained observers with millions of dollars invested in their training.
Yep.
I would submit to you it's pretty compelling, but on top of that, it's not just the eyewitness testimony. It is actual electro-optical data and radar returns. It's also people like...
Now, see, what he's saying is that they did a lot of observation to come up with, I'm talking eyewitness, radar observation, the fighter pilots' testimonies, this, that, and the other. And they've done a lot of, and this is not of human origin. Also, this was top secret. This was not going to be released until one of those senators that's leaving ordered it to be released. And he's got 3 of them that's coming out. This is one of them, so 2 other ones outside of this.
Radar operators and air traffic controllers. So I think the discussion should be maybe a little bit broader than that. I think people are focusing just on 2 videos coming from a set of F-18s when really it's a lot more than that.
So he says a lot more than that.
So recently, I guess it was in October, astronomers spotted what they say could be the first interstellar asteroid. You see it there, kind of that strange shape from beyond the solar system. What do you see when you look at that?
Well, Ms. Burnett, I have to admit to you, when I ran this program, I was fundamentally looking at, my colleagues looking at 2 things.
Yeah.
What is it and how does it work? We have deliberately stayed away from going down the rabbit hole of who's behind the wheel and what are their intentions.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people have a lot of feelings towards that and are very emotional about that. And what I wanted to do is to allow the data to speak for itself and then use that data to inform leadership, senior DoD leadership, about the potential threat that these type of technologies pose to national security, especially over any type of controlled airspace that we might have. So I'm not trying to be evasive in any way or vague with your answer, but
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of possibilities.
Look, and I know you think it's important. I know you think that the government didn't take the threat seriously enough. So let me just ask you point blank the question. Do you believe that life from somewhere else, while you ran this program, came here, visited, observed?
I will tell you unequivocally that through the observation, scientific methodologies that were applied to look at this phenomena, that these aircraft, we'll call them aircraft, are displaying characteristics that are not currently within the U.S. inventory nor in any foreign inventory.
Not in the U.S. inventory, not in any foreign inventory. Extraterrestrial craft, beyond a doubt.
That we are aware of.
So I know you're being clear, but I mean, the answer is yes.
The answer is yes.
I can't speak on behalf of the government. Obviously, I'm not in the U.S. government anymore. My personal belief is that there is very compelling evidence that we may not be alone.
We're not alone. That's amazing. Somebody that ran the government, it was the head of this program. We may not be alone. and he wants to say we're not alone.
Whatever that means.
All right, well, Luis, I appreciate your time. Thank you so
Yes,
very
ma'am.
much.
And by the way, your eye doesn't look too bad.
Oh,
Amazing, amazing. There we have it. All these years, I've been knew this before because there's no question. I studied astronomy, and that nothing on the planet Earth is actually from the planet Earth. Water was brought to the planet Earth. The Earth is just a planet. It's not a mysterious, magical ball. The Earth formed just like Mars, Venus, Jupiter did. Same time our galaxy was formed, our planet was also formed. And 2 billion years ago, life was not even habitable on the planet Earth. Life was brought to the planet Earth. The Earth wasn't even inhabitable 2 billion years ago. It was just a ball of rock, or hot lava, and water through asteroids and comets bombarded the Earth. I'm going to bring you guys one of the most compelling, unbelievable witnesses. Now, this guy's named Bob Lazar. He worked at a S4 military base south of Area 51. I'm not going to bring you guys the entire interview. His documentary is all over YouTube. He says he works south of Area 51. He says there's no alien craft at Area 51, but the alien craft are held south of Area 51 at a military base called S4. He is a scientist that worked on this project. He had majestic clearance. I want to bring you guys his testimony on what he was saying on how the craft operate. Because one of my biggest things was that if alien craft came to the planet Earth, one thing that makes sense to me is that if they're traveling at the speed of light, if they're 40 light years away, take them 40 years just to get there, would it even be worth them coming? And he's saying they're not traveling at the speed of light. They're using space-time travel, something about... I'm going to bring you guys his testimony. Check it out.
Doesn't shield you, but essentially you're in, and this is a terrible way to say it, almost in a different realm, because you're now influenced only by that gravitational field. For instance, people wonder how a craft like this can make a turn at such high speed, a 90-degree turn, when they would imagine people slamming up against the wall or something to that effect. Well, that really wouldn't happen. Inertia would have no effect. You're in a distortion, and don't forget that gravity distorts time and space, so really nothing is going to influence you while you're in there.
Describe the gravity amplifiers for us and some of their different operating configurations.
There are 3 amplifiers. The craft can operate on a single one, can lift off the ground. The way in which it's propelled are 2 different ways. There's what they call Omicron configuration, where the craft is using one generator, or Delta configuration, where it's utilizing all 3. Delta configuration would be for space travel. Essentially, the craft will tilt up on its side, as opposed to a science fiction movie where you see a flying saucer moving around. The craft will tilt up on its side, focus the 3 gravity generators to a single point, and move through space that way. Moving around the source of gravity is a problem to a disk because it's interference, essentially. So what they do is they work with that interference to their benefit. They'll use one gravity generator to lift the craft off the ground. And as opposed to what we're used to, for instance, a plane, once it's in the air, we envision thrust or some force coming out the back of it to push it forward. The crafts work completely opposite of that. What they do is once they're hovering in the air, they'll swing the 2 remaining gravity generators up in front of them and create a distortion, essentially a downhill, and the craft rolls downhill for infinity. It's always chasing a little distortion. That's why they look goofy when they fly around at low speed, because they're essentially, and any time you run over, the gravity field around the Earth is not completely constant and stable, depending on the minerals and density of the Earth underneath it. The gravity will vary somewhat, and you will get odd movements of the craft. So its low speed mode is kind of unstable for the most part. I only witnessed one test flight up close, officially. That I was just inside the hangar. The test was going up, probably, just as the sun was going down. And it was a low performance test. I believe there were some pilots or test pilots in the craft. The craft must have been retrofitted to fit them because the seating arrangements were really not accommodating. They were in radio communication with the craft, which is kind of surprising to me because the gravity waves that the craft was producing should have distorted the radio waves also. So apparently there's something there that I don't understand. The craft lifted off the ground, virtually noiseless other than a small corona discharge on the bottom of the craft, indicating the presence of high voltage. That dissipated at about 30 feet, and it stood there completely silently, and moved over to the left, to the right, and sat back down. That was the entire test. However, that was an extremely impressive test. Maybe to someone that really knows little about science or anything, that wouldn't be a whole lot, but you have to realize this craft was about 52 feet in diameter. I don't know exactly how much it weighed, but it weighed a lot. And this was quite a scientific feat to lift something completely silently, under control, and perform a maneuver like that. The craft itself was, I assume it was metal. It was cold to the touch, that's why I say it was metal. But it was a brushed aluminum, actually just an unfinished stainless steel, not shiny finish to it. Had no seams. It was as if it was injection molded from one giant die. I was completely amazed. I can't really reflect on how it made me feel, but that was exciting.
How would you define gravity? Could you describe in layman's terms its basic principles for us?
Gravity is something difficult to explain because it's something that we essentially don't understand. It's just something that we can observe. Not much is really known about gravity. There are many theories about it, but they are just mainly theories. There's theories of gravitons, which allege that these subatomic particles that act like an attractive force like gravity that exchange between two pieces of matter. There's also a theory that gravity is a form of wave, an electromagnetic wave. But basically gravity is a force. It's the attraction, it's the inherent property of matter to have gravity, a mutual attraction for each other. And it's basically all that we really know. Modern science, current science right now, identifies one gravity. It's one force in nature. Apparently, through research at S4 or information gained from one of the crafts they were researching there, it appears that there are two different forms of gravity. One form works on an atomic scale, on subatomic particles, holding pieces of matter, holding atoms themselves together. Another works on a larger scale, the scale we're most familiar with, holding planets in orbit, holding ourselves to the ground, things of that sort. Because it produces a gravitational field, I wouldn't say the craft is invisible during the day. However, if you're under the craft, because of the way the gravity is being used, gravity bends time and space, and it bends light. If you are looking underneath the craft or from certain vantage points, you will actually see what's above the craft. It's really a trick of the way light bends under the influence of gravity. For instance, we can see stars that are behind the sun, that are blocked from our view by the sun. The reason we can see them is because the sun is a tremendous gravitational field and it's bending the light around it where we can see the star. Space-time and gravity are all essentially interrelated. They all act on one another. Gravity bends space. Gravity also distorts time. When you vary one, you essentially vary the other two. As an example, if you have a massive body, say a planet or something that's making a lot of gravity, producing a lot of gravitational waves, if you will, it distorts space. It bends space to it. It also slows down time. These things aren't theories. We know them to be true. We cannot artificially create this because we can't create gravity. But this is how they're all interrelated.
What are some of the inherent problems with traveling at the speed of light?
There are several problems traveling at the speed of light. Just a couple of them are the fact that as your speed increases, so does your mass proportionally. In other words, the more energy you put in to go faster begins to slow you down by the fact that it's converted into mass. You have other problems like just traveling at such an extreme velocity, navigational problems, the fact that you might run into little tiny micrometeorites at speeds like this. They would undoubtedly destroy your craft. There's just a whole host of problems that you're going to run into just attempting to do something like that. Aside from the fact the amount of energy required to accelerate to the speed of light is horrendous.
Could you briefly describe Project Looking Glass and Project Sidekick for us?
Project Sidekick was another project going on with Galileo. Galileo was the project that I was involved in. Sidekick dealt with any of the weapon potential of the craft, whether or not the craft had a weapon in it or could it be used as a weapon, but it had something to do with some sort of particle beam configuration where the gravity generator can be used as a lens to focus a weapon of some sort.
Okay, so that's Bob Lazar. I'm going to put the link to Bob Lazar's full documentary. He has a host of, he's the guy who actually tipped everybody. That was in 1989. He is the most believable. He's been through so many interviews, so many lie detector tests, passed every one. Specialists all around the world talk to him, and every single one of them say he is the most believable ever to tell it. He worked at and he has the facts. He's a physicist from MIT or whatever that worked Los Alamos nuclear whatever base in Nevada, and the base was south of Area 51 called S4. I'm gonna put the link to Bob Lazar interview. However, this is huge. At the same time, even in our time in 2017, we're finding thousands of planets, Earth-like planets that may be habitable. We know this for a fact that the just the Milky Way galaxy alone has over 400 billion stars. Every one of them with the possibility of 8 to 10 planets around them, making the possibility of Earth-like planets in the trillions. That's just the Milky Way. And there's hundreds of billions of different galaxies, making the amount of Earth-like planets a number that's not even heard of. The fact that the possibility of life is at 100%. 100%. This is not theory. We know this to be fact now. Anyway, this is huge. I keep y'all posted. I keep y'all updated. Make sure y'all like, comment on this video. Also share this video. And look up the articles yourself on CNN. Make sure you follow Bob Lazar. He is the most credible. I'm going to put the link to his videos in the description box. All right, y'all. Peace.